What's going on, everyone? My name's Tenebris Infinite, and I've been thinking up this idea for Generation Zero for the better part of the past week, thinking of ways we can improve the bullets here in Generation Zero. Bullets in the game, they're okay. They do the thing. They shoot the machines and they make the toasters go boom, and it's satisfying and, it works. But there are definitely some ways we could see the bullets of Generation Zero shifted around with certain random percentages that would greatly improve the overall balance of the game. These random chances would greatly improve various types of ammunition and weapons that you might not be so driven to use in the game, and I think would further incentivize having variety in your gameplay here in the game. So, what I'm thinking are bullet penetration alongside bullet fragmentation. These two things would come together to create a much more semi-tactile experience. It would also greatly improve things like armor piercing ammunitions in the game and make them behave the way you expect armor piercing ammunitions to work. Now, the way I'm looking at these two is that bullets could have a certain percentage towards either having a fragmentation chance, which would essentially result in a critical hit on a component, or having a penetration chance of getting through armor pieces and damaging components, as well as damaging components that are directly in line with other components in a kind of just horizontal line. Each bullet type could have a corresponding percentage chance of having either of these effects happen, with hollow point and soft point having the highest fragmentation and the lowest penetration, FMJ being the kind of all-arounder on both ends, and then armor piercing having very low fragmentation chances, but having very high penetration. Now, let's take a look at Tarkov for a quick example, because I really like using Tarkov for examples lately. So, in Tarkov, you have the ability to shoot through certain surfaces, and depending on the type of ammunition you're using, you will have certain chances of either having your bullet penetrate through the surface or body armor that the thing you're shooting at has, or ricocheting off of it, and you can see this when you read the description of ammunition in the game. If we look here, we can see where our bullets are entering into this room made out of, cheap tin metal, and then exiting out and potentially even going through the tin metal on the other side. I'm not quite savvy enough to set this up in a match, but say if there was a player on the other side of this tin metal, if you were to take a shot through, especially with armor-piercing rounds, you would be doing some serious damage to the target on the other side of the wall. And even though, heck yeah, you could totally hide inside of a house in Tarkov, it's not quite the safe place that it is in Generation Zero. And then on the other side of the spectrum are ammunition types like soft point, hollow point, and slugs that have a chance to cause bleeding on the target you're shooting at. So it's not like we're going to be jumping into Generation Zero and bloodletting the oil out of these machines, but I do think the fragmentation chance could come into play, especially when it comes to direct hits on components. Essentially, this fragmentation chance could work like a crit chance on the component that you're shooting, allowing you to make even further utilization of using the right type of ammunition against the right type of component. Which would take around 32 ACP that has a crazy amount of stopping power in real life. And it would take that and it would make it far more applicable to using against the machines, especially in a way that understands the machine's components and understands the machine's weak points and just utilizes all the things that makes Generation Zero good. It also would mean that your hollow points and soft points would be far less effective against armor pieces on machines, as the kind of armor penetration idea that I have in mind would actually nullify these types of ammunition against pieces of heavy armor. But the other thing too is this could bring about a further distinguishment of different ammunition types. So, for instance, 44 hollow point is likely going to keep its form a little bit better, but have a higher chance of fragmenting because of its higher velocity and muzzle velocity. Whereas the 32 ACP will likely have a pretty decent chance of fragmentation, but a lower chance of fragmentation than something, bolt action or of a higher caliber. So 32 FMJ would not have the penetration capability or fragmentation capability of, say, 44 FMJ. There would still be a meta to follow here in the game, but the idea is that 32 ACP would be far more efficient if you were using it properly. So next up, to talk about the penetration idea that I have a little bit more thoroughly, and this is where we take that Tarkov example a little bit more literally here into the game. The idea is that each varying ammunition type with its percentage of penetration chance would have a chance of also going through static structures like houses, trees, and, anything that a bullet would believably actually go through. This would follow a similar kind of idea as the whole fragmentation chance, where it's like the higher caliber, the stronger bullet that you're using, the better chance it's going to have of actually going through that static surface and then reaching the target on the other side. Now that we've covered the two high fragmentation chance type ammunition with hollow point and soft point, let's take a look at Full Metal Jacket and armor piercing. Full Metal Jacket would be a little bit different to armor piercing, and the fact that it would still have a chance of fragmenting. And this would allow the bullet to kind of, again, serve that purpose of being the all-around beater, like burner type of ammunition in the game, where you could use it efficiently against armor, efficiently against components, and also have decent, penetration capabilities of reaching other components on the other side of machines. And then, let's talk about armor penetrating. That would have the lowest fragmentation, the lowest kind of crit chance of all of the ammunition types in the game, but would also kind of serve as an interesting addition and, I think, logical way of expanding on armor-piercing rounds, taking them away from being just like a heavy armor damage dealing thing, and bringing them more towards a kind of real, immersive approach to what armor-piercing rounds do. Essentially, with the armor-piercing rounds, something like 50 BMG would have the lowest amount of fragmentation chance, maybe like a 1% chance. But the neat thing about armor-penetrating rounds is that they could have multiple opportunities to enter a fragmentation state of doing that crit damage. And again, the higher up in caliber you go, the lower your fragmentation chance you have, but the higher chance you would have of reaching components on the other side. Which, I know, yeah man, we've got the experimental PVG with its penetrating experimental factor, but I've been looking to take that experimental factor away from the EXP PVG for since its inception. So any way we could make that happen would be a good thing to me. And the way the experimental PVG can still stay top dog in the game is by having just ridiculous penetration chances, like a 200% penetration chance, so that no matter what, it always just penetrates things. That's what she said. But again, the whole idea of having these percentage chances added to bullets is creating a more, invigorating experience and a much more varied opportunity within the meta of Generation Zero. And yeah, we'd still have experimental ammunition and experimental weapons and stuff, but the meta would become far more broad and balanced, so that way you could pull away from those weapons if you want to and still have just as efficient of an experience, and the only benefit that experimental ammo and weapons would have are the extra bells and whistles added on top, as opposed to just being ridiculous powerhouses in the game. To just quickly jet back to the house example that we were talking about earlier with static structures and stuff, Full Metal Jacket would again have maybe a 50-50 chance of going through that wall, whereas armor piercing would have a 75 to 80% chance of going through the wall. And even though, yes, this does mean that our invincible Swedish trees would no longer be invincible, I think that would be a good thing overall. It would increase the amount of threat that machines pose when you're out in a forest, and also it would give you the opportunity to buzz cut through a forest if you wanted to, if you were dealing with a lot of lynx or a lot of small machines. And I don't know if you guys have ever looked at, like, the wall thickness here in the game. These walls are, like, 2 inches thick, man. A bullet would go through that, come on. And before anyone goes like, oh, that would be, like, way too technical for the game, there are already structures in the game that have bullets just pass right through them. All that would need to be done is, like, a blending of all of these surfaces and just, like, maybe a little bit of computation, and bada bing, bada boom, you got the end result. Okay, maybe it would be more technical than that, but the end result would be super cool and really beneficial to the game, I think. So, I want to know, what do you guys think about my ideas for bullet fragmentation and bullet penetration? Is this something that you would like to see in the game? I know that it would mean that, like, houses and forests and stuff like that aren't quite so safe, but I personally kind of view that as a good thing myself. So let me know what you think down in the comments down below. We got a couple more videos coming out this week, but I'm taking this week a little bit easy. But either way, I just want to say thank you very much for watching. Hopefully you all enjoyed, and I will catch you all in the next one. Until then, peace.